A board workshop of the Board of Trustees of the McAllen Independent School District will be held Tuesday, April 29, 2025, beginning at 5:30 p.m. at the Dr. Ricardo Chapa Boardroom Administration Building of the McAllen Independent School District, 2000 North 23rd Street, McAllen, Texas 78501. At this meeting, there may be discussion by the board on the items and subjects listed as follows. Call the meeting to order. I have done so at 5:30 p.m. Number 2, public comments. Number 3, we don't have any public comments, by the way. Number 3, 2025-2026. Fifth budget workshop. Presentation by financial advisors Estrada and Hinojosa. 2024-2025 budget update, 2025-2026 budget projections, budget reductions, budget increases, property values update, 2025 tax and impact to homeowners, interest and sinking voter-approved outstanding debt, debt defeasance strategy, INS tax rate and debt analysis, facilities needs assessment, employee benefits update, legislative updates, and Dr. Gutierrez, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Yes, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Madam President and Board of Trustees. TA and Board Policy CE local required districts to prepare a budget for anticipated expenditures and revenues before the June 19th and approved by the Board of Trustees by June 30th. We have our Business and Operations Office staff, Ms. Lorena Garcia, our Deputy Superintendent, will present on the 5th budget workshop for the 25-26 budget year. And I'm going to go ahead and start with Ms. Garcia, but I know that she's got some presenters that will be presenting on the first item. So go ahead, Ms. Garcia.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to introduce Dr. Miguel de los Santos, Bobby Escamilla, and Angel Magallanes from Estrada Hinojosa, our financial advisor. They do have a PowerPoint that they'd like to share with us.
Well, let me keep that back. I think it's the same. Yeah, I think it's they updated mine.
Thank you.
I'll double check.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Gutierrez, I'm Miguel de los Santos, Estrada Hinojosa, of course, Bobby Villarreal, Angel Magallanes, and our newest member to our team down here, Jose Silva. He's been with us for about a year, but he's been in Austin and Dallas and everywhere else picking up the trade. Originally from McAllen, former graduate of Memorial High School. Very proud that all of us are natives from down here. Bobby's about 60 miles north of here. So, but anyway, it's always a pleasure to be before you. I'd like to say that to give foundation to this presentation, it's kind of a, we kind of dropped the bomb on Dr. Gutierrez when we dropped this information on him. But we've been tracking the legislature relatively closely for the last, since they start, but usually legislatures start, and just kind of fiddle around for a while, and then they start to get active a month or two before the end of the session. So this last week, there was a lot of activity on a couple of bills that are very pertinent to school districts, particularly school districts that may be considering voted debt in the near future. So we talked and we decided that it was something that we needed to put on the table for the board for consideration, for your perusal, whatever it is that you want to do with it. But I think it's pertinent to McAllen ISD and to a number of other clients throughout the valley. We're making this kind of presentation to serve all our clients. So with that, I'd like to get into the presentation and tell you what's happening in Austin and the kind of effects that it has on the school district here. kind of implications that it has for you for future financing of capital needs, and then leave it in your hands in terms of digesting information and dealing with decisions that will probably be coming up before you in the near future, or maybe distant future. Your call. Okay, Dr. Gutierrez, we get ready to go?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Bobby's going to flip for me. So back in 1924, you authorized, in August of 24, the board authorized a defeasance resolution, which meant that we would go out as your financial advisors, and you maintain your tax rate at 16 cents, 16, and part of that was to pay your current debt, and the other part was to be used to we call it defeasance, basically to pay off early some of your current debt. So recently, I think it actually closes tomorrow. Recently, we did that defeasance, and that defeasance resulted in the saving summary that is right there. If you look at that little where it says saving summary, the numbers on the right-hand side, in essence, what happened through the defeasance, you took off of your books $8,058,400. And went off of your books. You don't know it anymore. It was paid off, and it was paid off with monies that you collected through INS taxes of $7,363,000. So you took out $8 million with 7.6, and the savings in interest for paying it early, you ended up saving $694,000 approximately. So the purpose of the defeasance was twofold. One, to retire current debt early so that you could be debt-free faster, and the other was to maintain the tax rate at 16 cents for future financings if necessary. So those were the two reasons that you did another defeasance, by the way, in 2023, the year before, for the same purpose. You had different financial advisor back then, and this particular one we proposed to you and we followed through with it. And I won't get into all the numbers at the bottom. The summary of the whole thing is right there, what I just said. Unless there are any questions, I'll be happy to address them. Now, what's happening in the, before I get into the legislature, I need to do a kinks, because the legislature is very unpredictable. You know, whatever I'm going to share with you is what we know right now. There could be a change. I mean, it could all be wiped out, or it could stick, or it could be amended. I mean, so many things can happen in the legislature. The bills that I'm talking about, particularly one, House Bill 19, is still in committee in the House and is being addressed by the legislators. And at some point in time, they'll either decide to move forward with it or let it die in committee. But we're not going to wait those 8 or 10 days that they're going to take before that decision is made. We needed to come before you and inform you. So whatever I'm saying tonight, if you would please take it with the following assumptions as a base. That is, the assumption is that the state will approve the provisions of both House Bill 2 and House Bill 19. House Bill 2 is a general education bill. That addresses everything: special education, funding, compensatory education, buses, transportation, and so on and so forth. House Bill 19 is more specific to school districts and leveraging debt through your INS tax rate. The second is we're assuming that the board would consider and approve a defeasance of further debt in the year 25-26. And then the third bullet there is that everything that we have analyzed, we based it on your current values, 24-25. Most recently, I believe school districts began to get their preliminary values for the 25-26 school year, but we don't have something more firm, so we use the values that we currently have. The other is what I'm calling approximates here. These are the kinds of things that are also variable, and you know, as you get nearer to a financing, you begin to get closer to what these numbers may be. But always, you're going to have fluctuations in interest rates. You know what the country is like right now in terms of the market, in terms of, you know, bonds and interest rates and so on. So that will change, hopefully for the better. It's probably the highest that we've seen in my time that I've been with Estrada Hinojosa, and that's been for 27, 28 years. But the way we look at it is got nowhere to go but down, but don't be surprised. So the second point there that I have is that the amounts, other than what I just presented to you on the defeases as you just did, that if you were to authorize to move forward with future defeasances, that what we provide is, at this point, is could fluctuate, could go a little bit up or down. They're not fixed. And then the third one is that, according to the legislature, they have what is called a 20% limitation of 20% on property tax collections. What that says is that they're going to take your collections from property taxes for the last 3 years. They're going to multiply that by 20%, take an average of that, and then that average will be times the 20% average will determine how much money the district can actually use to leverage any new debt. And I'll get into a little bit more detail in a few minutes. The fourth point being that it's an approximate, the amounts of debt or project fund that we'll present are also approximates. They could go up a few $1 million or down a few $1 million, but we created those with the facts that as we know them today. And then, of course, everything is, if this legislation make it out of the committee and into the House and into the Senate and with the signature of the governor. And that remains to be seen. Any questions at this point? The third slide that we have for you is just a blurb on House Bill 2, Public Education and Public Schools, with reference to defeasances. With reference to defeasances, House Bill 2 says that if a school district or if an entity does a defeasance where you're paying debt off early, that there will be a reduction in state aid with collections over the annual debt service. In other words, you'll get a penalty, and let me talk about that for a second. So in summary, what that statement says, if you were to have a defeasance in 25-26, that defeasance, that amount, will raise about $8.8 million in local tax levy. With a defeasance, the district would forego about $991,803. In order to retire, you would actually be taking out the remainder of your debt with a defeasance of $9.3 million. Now, that $991,000 does not come out of pocket. It's not something that you would write a check from your M&O fund or from your general fund, but rather it is money that would be collected for INS purposes because of your homestead's going down. The state is going to supplement some of that money for bond payments. Well, that would be a loss, and we're putting that on the table. That's in the bill. So in essence, a district that takes that hit would be taking a hit in order to pay off, in this case, $9 million early. So, and also, the defeasance will allow the district, if you have a defeasance, you would be in a position to hold your tax rate to 16 cents, take out all of the debt that you have, and be debt-free actually by the end of 2026. I'll get into a little bit more detail on that in a second. The second bill that we're looking at in terms of the legislature is House Bill 19, and in reference to the issuance and repayment of debt by local governments. They're setting, it used to be that local governments would have an election, borrow money, and set a tax rate in order to be able to raise the money to pay those bonds. Now they're saying, we're creating new limits for you. So the items of potential major impact in this bill referring to school districts, and by the way, this time around, it's not just referring to school districts. Municipalities are part of the picture, cities, counties, and so on. So one of the major things that happens here, it puts a crunch on many of our clients, many school districts, cities, counties, municipalities, many municipal governments across the state of Texas, is that we used to be able to do elections in May or in November. And this particular bill restricts any elections for financing to November. So the reason that it's very important for you all to consider the rest that I'm going to say is because November of 2025 plays, and November of 2026, maybe a little bit out of, it still plays, but it may not be as lucrative to you as November of 2025. The debt limitations, as I said, that are being set by the state, and I mentioned it earlier, is that they're going to take your best 3 years, the last 3 years of what you collected in taxes. They're going to multiply that, do an average of that, multiply it by 20%, and whatever comes up, that's what you're going to have as what they call funds with which to leverage debt. So in this particular case of the school district, the district's average collections is $91,900,000. 20% of that is $18,895,000. And what that says is that $18,895,000 would be what the district could spend as a bond payment to new debt. Now, the implications of that, and by the way, that doesn't account for districts that have old debt, doesn't account for that. It just accounts for September the 1st forward. The little table at the bottom just is an impression of what I just said. Going further with that particular concept, I'll touch on it in a bit, but let me talk about the defeasance for a second in a little bit more detail. Remember that what I said earlier, a defeasance is used by school districts, municipalities, to keep a tax rate, a certain amount of tax rate that raises enough money to pay off debt early. And in essence, what you're doing by paying off debt early is you're creating capacity for future financing. Now, to authorize a defeasance, in other words, if we were to come to the table and you were considering moving forward with a defeasance, the change in the law is that you can't do it just by a simple majority, which would be 4 votes, but they're calling it a supermajority, which in essence would be 60%, would be 5 votes. At least 5 board members need to vote for it if it comes before you. So, and then approval of the defeasance, I'll repeat myself, retires principal and interest of current debt early and maintains your tax rate at 1616. The 1616 will raise the maximum amount of tax collections, which would be 18.9, about 19 million, to leverage voted debt. So the next question would be, so how much would 18.9 or 18.895, as we said, how much would that buy you? What can you leverage for it? A lot of times people go buy a car and they say, well, how much do you want your payment to be? Well, In this case, you say, well, how much do you want your payment to be? Well, $18,900,000. Okay, with $18,900,000, you're gonna buy a car that is of such value. In this case, for 18.4, what I have here, you would be able to collect that with a 16-cent tax rate increase, and your maximum project fund amount would be approximately $290 million. So if the district were to consider moving forward with capital projects financing through bonds and an election to, allowing the people to vote for or against, putting it out for election, then you would have a maximum of $290 million that under this particular law, you would qualify to access. Right. You would be maintaining the tax rate at 16 cents. To leverage $290 million, to borrow $290 million, under current markets, under the approximates that I gave earlier, you would need approximately $17.5 million. That would be the debt service on those bonds. Now, why all of that? Where's all this leading? And where it's leading is this. The tough decisions that need to be made by administration and the board, by the team that we have up here, are based on the defeasance or not defeasance, and the fact that if you don't do the defeasance, in a sense, the bottom portion, that spreadsheet right there, is the product, the work, where we get our numbers from and so on. But what it amounts to, if you look at the first two lines, 25 and 26, and you go to the right hand, right to the third column from the left, where it says estimated calculated INS debt, you will see that in 2025, which is now, fiscal 25, your tax rate on the INS taxes that you have to pay your debt, current and defeasance, was 16 cents. If you don't do a defeasance, what would happen is that in 25, 26, when you set your budget, Ms. Garcia would be presenting a budget on the INS side that would not include the 16 cents and would not include the defeasance, and your INS tax rate would drop to 6.5 cents. Okay? Well, you say, well, that's wonderful. We would be able to reduce the tax rate. But you would not be able to, if you ever did go out for a bond that you needed 16 cents for, you would have to ask for those 9 cents back from the people. So that's the dilemma, or the major decision, if you will, that you need to make. Any questions up to this point? Okay, on the next page, we have a defeasance summary and your historical tax rates. And the reason that we show you this is to give you an idea of what happens if you do, what happens if you don't. In 2025, with a defeasance, you had you were able to keep your tax rate at the far right column at 16 cents. If you had not, you would have had to drop to 7 cents. That's the third column. In 2026, if you do this defeasance, you'll be able to keep your 16 cents for future financing, which would be a bond that would take effect at the end of the 2026 school year. If you don't do it, then you drop your tax rate to 0.65, and you pay for the rest of in 26, you'll have a payment, 27 all the way to 29, you will have bond payments, and you will see, third column, where your INS tax rate would be reduced to 6.5, 6.2, 2, and 1.2. And the reason that is happening is because you're paying off debt, and you have less debt, less principal and interest, so as a consequence, you don't need that many pennies to service the debt. With the defeasance, you retire all of your debt by the end of 2025-26. Now, your historical tax rate is important because you know, I think you need to understand, and your public needs to understand, that this has not been a board that has been increasing taxes over the years. This has been a board that's been very prudent, and in fact, many of the opportunities you've had, when there were compressions from the state, you actually reduced the tax rates, you know, in favor of the public. In this particular case, we'll show you that all the way from 18, your total tax rate was $1.15 all the way across. And then you'll notice that your INS tax rate, which is a second line there, it went from 2020 to 936, 884, 758. And what that means was that as your debt was going down and your values were going up, you were able to collect more with the pennies to service lesser debt, so you didn't need 9 pennies, so you kept going down. In 2024, you did the defeasance in order to retire debt early and to maintain the 16 cents for future financing if necessary. So at this point, if you look at 2025, you have the lowest tax rate that you've had in the last 10 years or so. Now, in 2026, we don't know what it's going to be, but it's likely that there will be a compression from the state that will lower your M&O tax rate by X number of cents. And actually, the total likely will not go up, likely will go down a few pennies. I'm not sure what the calculations are at this point yet. But it'll probably be less. Even keeping the 16 cents, it'll probably be less than 99 cents. And then the final slide that we have, besides our disclaimer, which says we're not responsible for any of this, the final slide that we have is a summary of what I just said. Okay? The decision, you have basically the driving force here is the defeasance and the fact that you're pushed to November elections. If you look at the first decision possible that you can make is, okay, we're going to proceed with a defeasance and for an election in November of 2025. So you would approve the bond defeasance, maintain the INS tax rate at 16 cents, and retire all your current debt. At the end of 26, you would be debt-free. You would maintain the 16 cents. Those will be used to leverage new debt from a November 25 election, if it's successful, of course. And you would be able to access approximately $290 million with no increase in the INS tax rate. In other words, what you're using is your pennies that you've used to pay off old debt. It's kind of like making an improvement of your house. You lower your, you have enough money to go and do a second mortgage. You use that second mortgage to keep the payment where it is, but you're able to make improvement on your home that are needed after you've been there 10, 20, 15, 20 years. So, and then the third point, I've said it before, the potential project fund with no tax rate increase from what it stands right now, the 16 cents, it's approximately $290 million. And of course, in order to do that, you begin to deal with the tight timelines that I'm talking about. But the main date that is being used by Dr. Gutierrez and staff and some consultants that are working with you on a facility study is, of course, being before the board for action no later than August the 18th for a November election, 78 days later. So that's what happens if you decide to move forward with that election. Decision B, or what's the other alternative that we have? And you have that, and you also have, you know what, we decide not to decide. But the second decision possible is a decision not to proceed with a November election in 2025, not order the 25-20, you won't, if you don't, then you wouldn't need to order the 2025-26 defeasance because you would automatically have to lower your tax rate from 1616 to approximately, the second point there, to 6.5 cents, and then you would continue to pay 25, 26, 27, all the way to 29. And you can see that I put there, you would go from 6.5 to 6.2 in 27, to 2 cents in 28, to 1.2 cents in 29. At that point, you would be done. And then, of course, your potential fund, you might say, well, what would happen if we can't do an election, or we decide not to do an election in November 25? Well, you would go to November 26 if you chose to do so. And November 26, what tax rate you would have on the INS side would be 6.5 cents. Those 6.5 cents would, if you went out to your public and said, we're not going to increase the tax rate from where it exists in 25, 26, we're going to leave it at 6.5 cents, and you will have paid off all your debt by 29, then you would be eligible for, what do we say, $100 million. That was a point that we added at the very end, so about $100 million. So, and if you said, well, we want to go for the 290, well, you can go to the 290, but you would have to bring your tax rate up again to the 16 cents, or anywhere in between. You know, the footnote says reductions in tax rate from 16 cents will affect the amounts of bonds accordingly, or debt accordingly. And that's the news that we're bringing you. And we you know, the whole time we're looking at Dr. Gutierrez, and I think he may have visited with some of you, the possibility of financing, but in May, you know, with more time and so on and so forth. But the pressure, even those that are monitoring even much closer than us, you know, will say, you know, this may go away, but November is not going to go away. So that's, I hate to be the bearer of news that puts that kind of a strain on the board, but I don't know how else to put it on the table more clearly.
So if the state legislature doesn't pass that House bill that demands an election to be held in November, we'll know that in June-ish, at the end of June possibly?
The legislature is usually over by the end of May.
And so if that portion of that bill doesn't pass, then we could kick the can well down to a May election. But that would be the furthest, right?
Yeah, right, in May.
Right.
After May, again, you have the
So it's November of 2025 or May of 2026, and then
if May is allowable, yes.
if it's allowable based on, okay.
Yes.
But like Miguel said, it seems like the rumor out there is that November is going to be a whole.
We don't know, and that's the thing. You know, we come before you with a lot of ifs, but we think that you need to know prior to. I mean, even if there are ifs, because if it happens and we didn't come before you, then we say, well, what were these guys? I mean, they didn't show up. Should have given us a heads up as early as possible. So that's what we're doing tonight.
Is there a possibility under House Bill 2 that they may do a tax compression again? Some more, because I know that there was a lot of discussion, but I haven't heard anything lately. If they're considering another tax compression.
We believe that it's a very, very strong possibility.
Okay.
A tax compression, for some, especially the new board members, what that means is that the state dictates what your tax rate is going to be on the M&O side. And right now, I think you're
We're like
60-some cents.
83 cents, because it's 99
Oh, yeah,
cents.
but that's with your
with
TRE,
yeah,
election.
maintenance and operations and INS is
right.
99.
But your
Maintenance, is it?
your maximum tax compression from the state is the 60.
Oh, if we could go further down, yes.
Yeah,
Further.
they take out 17 cents.
So if it's possible, then.
So it could be that those 60-some cents go down a little bit. If they go down 2 or 3 pennies, you know, most boards will use those if they're in the position to do voted debt. They'll use them, transfer them to the INS side, and use them to leverage debt.
Okay.
Another component I would like to point out on the compression is as the years have gone by and your tax rate has decreased, the local tax levy has lowered over the years. So, with this new
Mr.,
bill,
can you be on
Oh,
the
yeah,
mic?
speak to
Oh,
this.
Angel.
with this new bill, as compressions have been occurring, your local levy has also been decreasing. So, for example, about 3 years ago, your local levy would have been about 96 million. Currently, this year, without the defeasance, it would have been roughly about 81 million. So when you're looking back and they're trying to average the last 3 years with a decreasing levy, as you proceed, if there is no defeasance or as we proceed forward and wait for upcoming Novembers, that amount of the total amount of a bond that you could actually go out for is going to lower as well. So as that average lowers, that 20% is going to lower, and it's going to lower that amount as well, cap it.
Imagine the sand of an hourglass.
Yeah.
At 99 cents, and we presented to the board the last budget workshop that at 99 cents tax rate that we have, we're the third lowest in the Region 1 area, if I recall. So we've managed it very well.
One of the reasons for that is that you haven't had any voted debt. You haven't had any bonds in forever. And the attempts that you had in the past were not successful. I remember, 2010 or 20, and then 2016. There were a couple of bonds there that one of them was, for whatever reason, the community voted them down. I don't know, but other districts were doing it. You go to many of the districts next door, I don't mean to compare you, but you're going to find facilities that are more modern. The other thing is, IDEA is not moving into school districts with older schools. They're moving in with brand-new high schools and brand-new elementary schools and so on and so forth. So the competition is getting tougher for school districts. So those are just items for boards to consider nowadays.
You made a comment how proceeding with this November election is more lucrative than in 2026. Is that just because we'd have a year head start, or is that because things are going to change?
Well, because the
potentially?
tax rate, you wouldn't be able to hold your tax rate at 16 cents. You would have to lower it down to 6.5,
Oh,
and 6.5 would only buy you 100 million
Okay.
instead of 290.
Without
You
raising
could do the
taxes.
290, but then you would have to go back to your voter and say, we need 9-cent increase.
It's like a yo-yo.
Yeah.
Yeah, so looking at it, we have to wait, like Debbie was saying, you have to wait to see what happens, right?
Right.
But all indications, and I've heard them too, is that is something that they think is gonna go through pretty easily. I know it was left, right, with the committee. This bill currently, House Bill 19, left, I think it was on the 21st or something like that. So I don't know when they meet again. But looking at it,
Privately right now.
oh, yeah?
Pushing it out.
From what I'm looking at is here, I'm not saying, but just looking at the scenarios, it makes more sense to our taxpayers if we were push come to shove, to get the more bang for your buck would be to, if we were to have to, would be to do something where you don't increase taxes, get the full amount, which is the 290 million, because then we'd have to increase it. And then if we wait till 2026, then construction costs go up, interest rates go up, who knows what happens. I'm not saying anything, just to be clear, I'm not saying, but I'm just
Workshop,
looking
we're
at,
talking.
yeah.
Yeah, it
But-
looks very favorable, the House Bill 19, from what we've heard. And, I mean, the thing that they're discussing mostly is that cap, that 20% cap. Or how it was originally written, it was going to cap all current debt and new debt altogether. So that would have restricted about 600 school districts throughout the state from even going for any future funding for years to come. Restricting also some special districts, your water districts, hospital districts, and a bunch of other smaller special districts that don't levy a huge M&O rate, and they just have a small INS rate. That would have restricted them even further from even improving their facilities and moving forward with any type of election. So that's really the component that they're trying to figure out and see what could be just a little better in their wording. But all the other components seem to be okay in their view.
Like 5 days ago, the drainage districts would have stopped building drainage canals.
I have a question.
Cleared that up a little bit.
I have a question real quick regarding Another item that was in that bill, if I'm correct, the waiting time, the period time before, like, for example, let's say a district goes out for an election, it fails. If I'm not mistaken, this bill is introducing a longer period, a blackout date, right? From, I
5 years.
think, 3 to 5 years is what it's switching it, right? Before you can go again. Is that,
Correct, but was that only for COs?
I think that's more pertinent towards cities, it has to do with tax and revenue bonds.
okay.
I think schools, you can go out, but the difference is that if you go to voters on the city side and they say no, you can't just go do a CO
Yeah.
without them later for 3 to 5 years. It was 3, now it would be 5.
Gotcha. Thanks for the
Cities
clarification.
and counties are able to borrow money for facilities without community, without the vote of the people. And they're putting the brakes on that.
Yeah, and the reason is you have TCQ, water issues, you gotta have safe water, you have to have safe streets, you have to have police and fire, but that's under sort of attack as well now, too, so.
What happens if we hypothetically go with option one and we go out for a vote in November and it gets voted down? Can we then bring it back in 28? Or I'm sorry, in 26?
Yes, you'll be able to bring it back. If this bill, House bill does pass through with the November restriction,
Yeah.
you'll be able to bring it every November as it reads, except that your tax rate, again, going for November of '26, you'll be starting off at a 0
Got it.
set tax rate, and any increases above that, you'll be asking from on the ballot.
So, as you know, we had an election years ago, and it was wildly unsuccessful and failed. And you said surrounding districts were able to get things passed. And to me, this seems very short notice, and there's a lot going up in the air, I know, with the House bill and things like that. But what is your recommendation if we were to hypothetically want to proceed with option one within this time limit, we have a school board election going on right now as well? What's your recommendation for moving forward?
I think it's kind of already in motion, except it was on a slower pace. And I think Dr. Gutierrez could probably speak better to that in terms of what the district is doing. I think the board not too long ago approved for a firm to do a facilities analysis for the school district. And in effect, what they're going to do is generate an amount that it would take to take care of those needs. And I think, was it yesterday? Yesterday that we were in a conference call with that particular firm, and they're moving. So Dr. Gutierrez has a better handle on that
Yes.
than I do.
Well, first of all, let me go back a little bit because the board did, the defeasance approved it in August of 2024 with the intent to do this in a reasonable timeline. But then board elections are going on and legislative session is going on. And this bill threw off those plans, because all of a sudden we didn't expect the House Bill 19 to do this to the districts that approve a defeasance over a year ago. And that's what is throwing us off now, our timeline, because we already had a timeline to consider this up until May of 2026. So we were going, in our pace, but still working it, and we were already planning the committees and having some workshops and talking to the board. But then last week is when this bill came up again, and now it's still in committee, it's still active, it's still out there that on the table, that is throwing off the election time now. Instead of May of 26, we have to consider now November of 25. Otherwise, we lose that opportunity to keep the same tax rate with the amount of money that we qualified for. Now, we could wait till November of 26, but that then we qualify for only 100 million at the same tax rate at that time. So those are the discussions we need to have, but at least it gives everyone time to think about it, to see what's going to happen. What are we going to do? Do we want to proceed? Do we want to, or wait till November 26, but qualify for a lesser amount? Now, House Bill 19 may die within the next 7 to 10 days. We spoke to Mo Casey this afternoon, and they said that within 7 to 10 days, if this bill doesn't get out of committee, so that's where it's at in committee, in all probability is gonna die. However, there is also a possibility that they may tag this bill to another bill. If it dies in committee, they may still be able to put this bill with another bill and keep it moving forward. So it's like we're in a very, a lot of changes could be happening very quickly, very soon. And those are the discussions we're gonna have to have, whether we want to pause and wait till next year, but then, what we qualify for, or proceed with a very aggressive timeline and very fast track now, because November is just around the corner. So, and this is all beyond our control. We don't control any of the, we don't control the variables. It's up in Austin legislatively on how they're going to proceed with House Bill 19 and how they're going to force some districts to proceed in a very fast track, or districts may just want to wait and take a lesser amount at a later time if they want to do that.
So to me, I mean, it would be crazy not to try, and if it's voted down, it's voted down, but it would be crazy if you have an opportunity to keep the tax rate the way it is and collect $290 million. To me, that's a no-brainer. But do you already have to have the debt, meaning the rushed part? Do we already have to have the plan saying that we're going to spend $290 million on A, B, C, and D? Or can you say we're going to keep those 16 cents because we're going to pay off $290 million in debt, and then we're going to figure out, okay, we're going to do this, 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 and this? Like, is that the rushed part, or can you, I guess that's to you, can we keep our, if we don't have $290 million in debt, are we allowed to keep our pennies at 16 cents? No. Right? So when do we have to show that that's debt? Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying it in a good way, but.
Yeah.
You
Well,
have to have,
You have to have
you
it.
have
You
to
have to have the debt.
16 right.
Right, so what are we paying for? I mean, I know we
Yeah,
have
you
to
have to.
have major necessity.
You have to have a facilities plan, because when we go out to the voters, we have to tell the voters, okay, we qualify for this 290 million, but we have to itemize to the voters, where are we gonna spend those 290 million, so that when they go out, if they're gonna vote on it, they're gonna know what they're voting for, what projects are we going to do, and what facilities are we going to improve, and so we have to, and that's where I'm finding the timeline to be very aggressively, that we need to
Right.
hurry up, is to identify all the needs of the district, and that's why we're doing the study, the facility study, but then prioritize those facility needs to where, from the highest needy facilities down to where $290 million can take us, and that would be our
Not
plan.
far.
That would be our plan to then to put it out to the community to be transparent and to inform them of what the projects are going to be identified and improved based on those that amount of money. And that's why we already started gathering representatives from each campus. We want to see we could have representatives from board members as well as business community, so that it becomes a community effort of getting input on facility improvements and what are those high priority areas that we need to do in McAllen ISD for this bond, and then put it out there for the voters for them to know where it's gonna go, the money's gonna go.
I mean, it's a shame that we even have to use the word bond, because that's going to scare people, because the reality is the tax rate will stay exactly as it is. So we're not doing anything, we're not increasing
No.
anything. And last time it passed by flying colors because our tax rate stayed the same, and so the whole community was fine with that. But now, in the same exact scenario, but having to say we're going to be doing this, this, and this, that's going to cause distraction for them, because they're like, well, I think we should be spending the money here, 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 here. And it's going to just really muddy the water. So, I mean, I think that because of the way it's all set up, I think there's no other way to do it than in November. But I think that we need to be really careful that the community understands that their tax rate is not raising. It's staying the exact same.
That's part of the education that is my responsibility, the administration's responsibility, to educate the community on that. We cannot, as administrators, employees of McAllen ISD, we cannot promote to vote yes on this if it decides, if we go out.
Yeah.
All we can do is educate the community on what improvements we're gonna make, where they're gonna be made, how much is it gonna cost us, and educate them on that, so that they can make a well-informed decision when they go and vote for it.
I think it's important that we ensure that our own city leaders are educated on this matter at hand because it benefits the city. There's not one time that a city leader doesn't tell us, well, we went to so-and-so city and they have amazing schools, and, we have to explain all of that is done with bonds. And here we have an excellent opportunity that would be at no tax implication to our voters for $290 million. I know I've asked Ruben and Mr. Trevino and others, how much would a new McAllen cost? And just that alone would be over $200 million, a lot more than it was 10 years ago when this was attempted. So I think the list of priorities is key for our voters to understand, and that they completely understand this is no tax increase to them, no tax implication. But then also, just because this board decides to put this on the ballot, it's not whether we agree or disagree. It's a matter of we're giving that choice to our voters, and it's in their hands to decide.
Yeah.
Because every day, parents talk about the needs in our district as far as facilities, and this is the way to do it, unfortunately, now.
From our meeting yesterday, as an observer to the needs of the school district, like you said, Ruben, Mr. Trevino, I think, the district has a pretty good feel for already, besides what the consultants are going to find and your community people are going to confirm, that there are some essential needs. I mean, roofs, air conditioning, parking lots, classrooms, fixtures, bathrooms in the schools, and so on and so forth. The kind of calls that many of you get from time to time from parents about what's going on with the schools. So you begin to even address those basic needs. And they've prepared, because yesterday they shared a list with me of, the different needs, just the different needs of basic improvement of the facilities in many of the elementary schools, middle schools, and of course the high schools. And, I looked at it, I said, that's $290 million plus, and it's just basics. Now, they also had some other things that they've identified. So it's a person that lives in McAllen ISD, or not only McAllen, but many of our school districts. Edinburgh, we're talking to them about the same thing. Basics. And the thing is that we would have to be totally blind not to notice that, you have an elementary school of top-notch quality that's surrounded by portable buildings, that could actually use a couple of nice wings so that the kids would be more comfortable in better learning environments and so on. So there's a lot of there's some study that has been done, and I'm sure it's taken a lot. Mr. Trevino spends a lot of time on that. I think I went to the bathroom and he was quoting numbers to Dr. Gutierrez during that time of his analysis, just from local analysis based on local markets and what is happening in other schools and so on, prices and so on. So there's a foundation for what some of you are addressing, some of you are asking. But I think that it'll be confirmed through the process that Dr. Gutierrez is utilizing, and that is bringing in the consultants, I believe you said around May the 10th or so, early May, to meet with staff and meet with committee members, and hopefully by that time you may have some community members appointed to the committee, and share with them what are the basic needs, do some tours of the facilities, document what it is that they see, and basically I call it confirmation, because Ruben knows exactly what the needs of each one of the schools are. So, through that process, I think you set a timeline to present something to the board, early enough that they could digest it before making a decision of whether to move forward on August the 18th to call an election order or not. The other thing that I remind you, particularly new board members, and probably not any of you, I think you all are new enough, majority of you anyway, that you haven't experienced calling an order for an election. You haven't been involved in that particular process because you're too new, that you weren't here before I believe it was 2010 when you had, 2010 or 2016?
2005, the last one. The last
Yeah,
one,
no, but the last,
No.
the big failed
We had one in
election.
2015.
Yeah.
15.
I was here.
I was here.
Okay, so you know, two of you know what I'm talking about. But what the board, and a lot of board members, I've seen boards call an election, and after they called it, I see in the faces of the board members like, what in the world did we just do? Like the whole world came down on them, like they are the ones that are responsible for an increase in taxes. And in these cases, there was an increase in tax rates. So I have to give them the speech that I give, you know, I used to give when I was superintendent and later as a professor at the university. When the board passes an order to call for a bond election, all you're doing is saying, look, community, when you elected me to sit on this board, you elected me to make decisions as an advocate for the boys and girls of this community. And I do that. But this is a major decision. I don't think that, you know, and plus the state doesn't allow it, but you really are saying, you know, that's a big decision that we would be, you need to be involved. The community needs to have the authority to say yes or no. It's the only thing that you're doing. You go out into the public and somebody says, why did you vote to order the election? I mean, you're raising taxes. No, I'm not raising taxes. I'm doing what you elected me to do. We've identified some needs that need to be addressed in the school district and in the best interest of kids. And, you know, I'm putting the responsibility on you as citizens to either agree with what we've identified or not agree. You know, I don't have the power to increase the tax rate that way. Cities and counties do, but school districts do not. So as a consequence, you know, I give that speech and people, you didn't increase taxes. You are just asking the community whether they're in union with what your thinking is. So that is the responsibility that you hold if you choose to move forward with an election, be it this November or any other November, that you are allowing the community to decide on an issue. We've been in school districts where the board decides not to even put it in front of the community. And I think when something like that happens, really the board is remiss in their own responsibilities of allowing the community to make those kinds of decisions. I won't charge you for that one.
For the record, in the event that we do this type of a defeasance, that it would just maintain the same tax rate. It would not be a higher tax rate. It would be the same.
That is
Just
correct.
for the record, that this for McAllen ISD, this would be retaining the same tax rate.
It's really a golden opportunity, except that you're under a lot of pressure now.
Because of House Bill
Right.
19.
But it's a golden opportunity. It's kind of like you've paid off something, paid off a car, and now you're able to go and buy a new one. So with the same amount of money that you were paying on the old one. So the other thing is that the 16 cents that you have, if it fades away, your needs are not going away. Your needs are going to be there, and as a consequence, at some point in time, either this board or some other board is going to have to address them. And when they do address them, they're going to have to go and say, hey, we want to do a bond. And I remember now, one of the main things, that $400 million bond that you did, why it was successful, there was a big tag. There was a big price tag to that. I remember what was maybe a 10, 15 cent or more tax rate increase. And you have very strong organized opposition to that bond. And that became the campaign in the newspaper. The campaign was more negative than positive. So the idea or the role that Dr. Gutierrez plays is to neutralize opposition with the fact that, you know, you're going out, you have this opportunity, and your tax rate is going to be staying the same or maybe even decreasing if there's compression. So, and by the way, I said I won't charge you for that. We won't charge you for anything unless the bond passes and you get the money in the bank. We're free.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Gutierrez?
Thank you,
Thank you so
Dr. De
much.
Los Santos and your team. Next.
We still have,
I'm gonna now turn it over to Ms. Garcia so that we can go over the rest of the presentation in regards to the budget for next school year. Go ahead, Ms. Garcia.
thank you. Yes, and with all those challenging decisions, we still have a budget to plan. So tonight with us is Mr. Joel Garcia. He is going to provide us an update on our current budget and also how next year's budget is looking.
Good evening, Madam President, President Peña, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Gutierrez, and members of the audience. This first slide has an update on the 24-25 budget. One of the things that we do in the finance department is every 6 weeks, we look at the state aid template and determine the revenue that we anticipate coming in for the year, right? And so we're using the latest template. This is the Omar Garcia Region 13 template, which is known to be very accurate. It already has the state controller's preliminary property values loaded. Through the first 5-6 weeks, the average daily attendance was 17,897. The budgeted maintenance and operations state aid, this is what we budgeted at the beginning of the year, was 129,039,964. And we're happy to say that we're projected, it's spot on at $129,940,559. So right now, we're anticipating an additional M&O state aid of $900,595. The total budget overview, including the general, debt, and capital, was $272.8 million. Something to keep in mind was the general fund did require a $4.5 million fund balance contribution to balance the 24-25 budget. Something else to consider was that we did have a reduced local tax collections of about $4.6 million this year. Additional expenditures for this year included $1.6 million in retention incentive payments and $1 million in new staff device leases. So this will be year 1 of 3. Despite these challenges, the estimated net fund balance is projected to increase by about $11.6 million by year end, depending on final revenues and expenditures.
I think I want to highlight that point.
Yes, sir.
Okay, go back on the projection that we have, that we may be increasing our fund balance for this year another $11 million, which is, that's just an estimate that we have, but that is something that helps tremendously as we plan for the 25-26 budget, especially when it comes to salaries and other projects that we want to do for the district. So just want to put that out there. We will not have final numbers until maybe October, or November, when they finalize the audit report. But we've been keeping track of what we anticipate as a savings of about $11 million. And just want you all to keep that in mind, because that's a tremendous savings that we've been working on for the year.
Thank you, sir. So one of the things that we've been prepping for this budget cycle is working on 2 different budget scenarios, right? One is with current law, and the other one is with House Bill 2. So with current law, one of the things that we've worked on is, of course, trying to determine the revenues. And so on this slide, you'll see the one excess revenues. This is the state aid, about $239,773,927. We also have a little bit of over $31.4 million in federal funds. Our debt service is at about $15.2 million, and our safe and secure program is bringing in about $308,000.
Time out.
Yes, sir.
We don't have those handouts.
Is this,
And,
the
and,
latest one
and
that
we're trying to.
Follow along.
Yeah,
It's
follow
on the-
along.
I'm sorry, it's on the SharePoint.
Can we get a hard copy real quickly?
Yes.
Or did just like the first 2 pages change? Or did it all? Because so far, the first couple of pages are different.
Yeah, we don't have it.
The one that was updated as of 4 hours ago
We
is.
made a couple of changes
Yeah,
today.
can we have copies real quickly?
Yes.
I was trying to follow.
Me too.
But, do we continue, or do we wait for the copies?
We can take a 5-minute potty break.
What's that? We go ahead and continue.
Continue?
Yeah,
Okay.
just blow it up big so we can see it.
I think she's driving it.
Yeah, there you go, right there.
So again, on this slide, again, we have, we're working with 2 different budgets. One is for current law, and the next slide will be for how things look with House Bill 2. For current law, in the first bullet, you'll see the revenues based off current law. Again, about 239.7 million in 1XX revenues. In federal, we anticipate 31.4 million. Debt service, about 15.2 million. And for the Safe and Secure program, about 308,000. Total revenue anticipated is 286.8 million. For the expenditures, you'll see them listed there, the 1XX AP, which are like the department budgets. It's about 59.1 million. In federal grants, or federal, about 14.5. Debt service, 15.2. Safe and Secure is 308,000. And one thing we did want to ask respectfully was just to have a little bit more time with the payroll projection. We are actively working with the human resource team and with the payroll team, and we just want to make sure, we want to verify the accuracy of the data for the anticipated payroll. On the right-hand side are some things to consider for current law for next, here we go, for next school year. Again, so as we calculate the revenue and expenditures using the current law formula, again, one of the things we want to consider is that we did have a $4.5 million, we need a $4.5 million fund balance contribution to balance the 24-25 budget. We also saw a reduction of about 4.6 million in local tax collections. And of course, and I think our insurance, Mr. Silva is going to talk a little bit about the health insurance plan later today. But the health insurance employer contribution, one of the things we did want to do, and we are putting into the scenario, is the increase to $55 per month per subscriber. So at about 3,050 subscribers times 12 months, the annual cost is estimated at about $2 million.
Mr. Garcia, I just want to go back up to on the general fund, on the considerations.
Yes, sir.
We're saying that we're going to have $4.5 million of fund balance contribution to balance the 24-25 budget, right?
So that was for this year, sir?
Right, for this year, correct. But that's not including the 11 million that we may save. That's, we already taken that out, and we're still going to save 11 million. Am I correct on that?
That's correct. So this was what we had actually, what was done at the beginning of last budget cycle.
Yeah. So we're going to cover those expenses, but the 11 million is still going to be there on the as part of a savings.
Correct. And just to kind of refresh some memories, I know that we utilized some ESSER funding to pay for some of the salaries, and that helped cover some of that cost. And that happened, I think, earlier or late last fall.
Yes. The other thing that I want to remind everyone is that we're also keeping an eye on the federal government, and not just the state legislature, but also the federal government, is because we're looking at that it doesn't impact or affect our title programs, Title I, Title II, Title III. So far from what we are understanding is that they're not going to impact our federal funds. That's what we understand, that it's not going to impact it. As you know, they're making a lot of cuts at the federal level, but from our understanding is that when it comes to federal funding for public education, it will remain the same, but that's as of this week. We don't know what else. If it changes, we'll let you know, but there's been discussions about that too.
Thank you. On this next slide shows what the revenue would look like with the additional funds from House Bill 2. So I know that we've run a couple of different calculations, and we're working on verifying, again, the accuracy of some of those estimates. A lot of it's based off ADA and a couple of other factors. Initially, using, again, the state aid template has been already updated for House Bill 2, and we're seeing an additional funding of, potential funding should House Bill 2 be finalized and approved, of 10.6 million. And so that's why you'll see the revenues updated under 1XX, an additional amount, right? So that's at about 250.4 million. Some of the other values stay the same, like the federal, the debt, and the safe and secure. And again, we'll be verifying the accuracy of the payroll data to ensure we can provide different scenarios for what the district may be able to afford as far as compensation goes. One of the things we do want to consider for compensation is with these $10.6 million from House Bill 2, there are some requirements. So 40% of the gain must be used for compensation and salary increases, and 75% of that 40% are required for salary increases for teachers, counselors, nurses, and librarians. In any case, we still need to work towards improving the health the health insurance plan. So on the employer contribution, that's the district side, we're proposing, again, the increase of the $55 per month for each subscriber.
So right now, no, just go back to the 10.6 million.
Yes, sir.
That's what preliminarily that's a preliminary amount that we would get an increase under House Bill 2 as we know it, and it's so far. But finally, we see some money coming in that we had not seen in a couple of years. Since what, 2019?
Yes, sir. The student basic allotment had remained the same at 6160 since 2019.
Yeah, so that's good news. Took us about 6 years later, but we're getting good news now.
So should we see those 10.6 million, that would help cover the 3, 4, 5% increase that we discussed in prior meetings, and then possibly would leave room should the board decide to go back to a planning period, then it really wouldn't affect the salaries because we would net that money. Is that a one-time 10.6 or is it a recurring?
At this point, as long as, I guess, every 2 years the legislature meets, but at this point, it's at least, we don't anticipate it changing should it pass. It still hasn't been finalized, but should it pass, we anticipate that approximate amount this year and then the following year as well. Possibly a little bit more the second year because some of the amendments that were made the last time included waiting on funding some programs like bilingual until the second year. So we actually may see a little bit more the second year.
Thank you.
So that makes me nervous, though, that only 40% has to go to salaries. I mean, because that, you don't have to use the whole 10 million on
Yeah,
salaries.
but I would argue, we would push for, I would hope, we would push for a larger, to get us to the 5%, right? And then maybe even help with some of the other losses that we've experienced. And so I think it helps get us there. It's never going to level I feel like we're always behind the other districts because we set our budget first and then they come and bump up their numbers.
Yeah.
But at least we could get closer.
Well, 40% is what they require. There's nothing to say that we can't go higher, right?
That's correct.
So I think that that's an option that we get with that money, and I would certainly advocate for higher increases and covering some of those losses that Trustee De La Garza Lopez mentioned.
So 40% is 4 million, is the 4%.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
There's only-
We need more.
yeah, we need-
But we could go 4 plus 4.
we can
I'll
share.
wait. Yeah, we can share now.
Yeah,
I don't
well, let's, we're gonna have to look at other slides that we have because there's other
we'll-
expenditures that we need to consider,
Right. We'll share Lizzie's.
okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry.
They're getting us each one because we only got,
There was only 4.
there's only 4,
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll share Lizzie's.
okay.
This next slide shows the property value update, property values for Hidalgo County for McAllen ISD. And so one of the things you want to just take note of here is that on average, the property values have increased about 4.4% annually. One of the things to look at also is in 2023, Senate Bill 2 was passed, and so that was increasing the homestead exemption from 40,000 to 100,000. And then for 2025, there's the certified estimates, so they're not final. We won't get the certified property values until the end of July. This next slide shows the 2025 proposed tax rate. I know we discussed this earlier with our financial advisor. It's at 0.9966, and again, that would be, should we maintain the M&O, maintenance and operations, at 0.8350, and the interest and sinking at 0.1616, with a total tax rate of 0.9966. I did complete the state aid template with House Bill 2, and although it's preliminary, we won't know for sure until the certified values come out and TA sends the maximum compressed tax rate, but we did see some compression to Tier 1 of about 3 cents. So just something to keep in mind. This next slide shows the impact to homeowners of the tax rate. So again, each year, property values in the community are often increased. Hidalgo County Appraisal District is responsible for determining these values, not McAllen ISD. So our role is to set the tax rate, which applies the values assessed by the appraisal district. The district is committed to being transparent and ensuring our tax rates align with state guidelines to support our schools and community. And so on this slide, you'll see that as a district, the tax rate we're proposing is going to be the exact same as the prior year. However, if the property value does go up, the taxpayer could see an increase to their tax bill.
Wait, say that again?
So on this slide, we just kind of want to ensure and clarify that the district does not set the property values. That is done by the appraisal district. And so what the district is proposing is keeping the tax rate the same at 0.9966. That said, should the property value increase, the homeowner may see a small increase in their property taxes. But again, that's because the property value increased, not because of our tax rate.
Okay. But that's also that possibility of raising the homestead exemption.
That's correct, yes.
There's also another bill on that one
To
that
200.
that is gonna go from 100 to 140,
That's correct, yes, sir.
140,000.
I think that's already pretty much cleared what it needs to.
Yeah, that's cleared a lot of hurdles,
Yeah.
so it's probably gonna pass.
Yeah.
There will be an increase to the homestead exemption of $40,000.
But a decrease to us.
Yes, yes, for the taxpayer to
Yeah.
pay less.
That's Senate Bill 4.
Mm-hmm.
And Ms. Garcia?
And now, moving on to the next part of our presentation, we're going to cover some of the things that we have cut back on that would produce savings as we balance our budget. First of all, we'd like to share with you that we identified 53 vacancies that were not filled throughout the year. And these positions were in the budget, and we are closing those vacancies and not filling them. So that's a savings about 3.2 million. And the chart there breaks it out by the type of position that was closed. We also identified 10 teaching positions that were classified as 199 that are being reclassified for next year for Fund 162, which is CTE funds. So that's a savings to 199 of 600,000 approximately. And then we continue to reduce central office budgets. Last year, we reduced the budget benchmarks by 10%. So we gave them the same 10% reduction. And that's a savings of approximately $1 million. Now, these are the things that would increase our budget expenditures. Of course, it's our compensation plan, which we did provide at the last workshop through TASB. They provided their estimates at the different percentages. A 4% is a $7.5 million at that rate. In addition to that, we did talk about in several budget workshops stipends and the proposed increase to those stipends. We brought you a chart that outlined which stipends those were and what dollar amounts were associated with it. TASB also made some recommendations in their presentation to increase, so I put all of that into one chart here. And it's approximately $582,000 increase to the budget. We also talked about our health plan, and there's a shortfall of approximately $4.8 million. We are looking at funding a little bit over $2 million by increasing the employer contribution to $55 per employee per month. And then the rest, we're hoping that we can cover it through savings and negotiation on the new contract. We do have some new positions that we shared with you all in previous workshops. The 4 bookkeepers for the middle schools, the middle school mariachi teacher, fine arts, we're debating on that one, whether it be an assistant director or a coordinator possibly. We're also recommending adding a behavior specialist.
Okay, wait, back up.
Yes, ma'am.
I thought that, when I saw this, I thought, oh, you're giving us, because at our first budget workshop and second budget workshop, we said we were getting an assistant director. And then when I saw this, I thought you're giving us a coordinator, because athletics has 3 coordinators and an assistant and a director. Fine arts has no assistant and 1 coordinator. So now you're going to move it down from an assistant to a coordinator, but a coordinator only makes, I could stay a choir director, I could get my teacher incentive allotment of $20,000 and make more than this. So why would I go to be a coordinator? So I would really like administration to rethink that and keep it at the assistant director and start leveling up fine arts. I mean, nowhere did we ever discuss not doing an assistant director until I saw here. And I got excited. I thought, woohoo, you gave me a coordinator as well. But no, you took away the assistant director and gave me a coordinator. So I really think that y'all need to work on that.
We also are proposing a behavior specialist and a marketing specialist, and then also adding the responsibilities of energy management officer. That would just be an increase in pay grade to an existing position. So that's a total of about 472,000.
Okay, Loretta, not to interrupt you again, but we went through the stipends really fast 2 pages ago.
Yes, ma'am. The
Are we not
stipend-
going to have any more discussion about that? Because in our first budget workshop, the stipends, we talked about doing 3 new stipends for athletics of $7,500 plus 15 extra days for the new, I forget the name of it. And we also talked about doing stipends in the amount of like 6,000, and then it got moved down to 4,000. So can we go over those stipends now?
We are gonna bring the stipends back to you all, and that's when we bring you the draft compensation plan. It's part of that presentation. It would be the salary schedules again, the staffing guidelines, and the stipends.
Okay, but
before the board actually votes on the
But
compensation
we
plan.
covered all the stipends.
we covered all the stipends at the first budget workshop, and then the second, so the first budget workshop, we covered the stipends, and for fine arts, we went from assistant choir director for 4,000 to 6,000, and middle school choir director, we went 5,000 to 6,000. At the same time, we also, in athletics, went special teams coordinator, 3 of them at 7,500 plus 15 days. Then the second budget workshop, we came back and we kept athletics the same way it was. We also introduced our capital improvement projects of $3.1 million, all for athletics, press box, bleachers, press box. And in that same budget workshop, we took away, or we lowered the stipends for the assistant choir director back down to only $500 more. Then the third budget workshop, we didn't talk about it, and so now we're talking about it here. We really need to level up, and I'm not saying anything negative about athletics, I'm saying we need to level up fine arts. I've been saying it since 2011, and I don't see any movement, and I think maybe some of the reason is when you're in athletics, you're very just competitive by nature, and their parents are very competitive, and they come here and they talk to us about natatoriums, they talk to us about baseball fields, they talk to us about turf, and they're all over social media, and so the board reacts to it. Fine arts, nobody reacts to it. Fine arts, they're competing at it's a team. The team wins sweepstakes. The team goes to nationals. The team goes to state. It's the team going to sweepstakes. We have incredible things going on in our fine arts program. And we have a few one-offs in fine arts. We have one person, in Broadway, and then going to London. We have one person in the Olympics swimming for athletics, and we have a few one-offs. But as a team, UIL, as a team, fine arts, we're doing spectacular things. And on such a shoestring budget. And I would argue that enrollments fine arts is what drives enrollment, really. People come to us for our fine arts program because we are incredible. And I'm not just talking mariachi. Everybody always touts mariachi, but all the other things, our choir, our band, our theater, our dance teams, they are competing at national levels, at state levels. They are winning all sorts of awards, and their budget is $2 million versus athletics is $6 million. They have one director, no assistant, and one coordinator. Athletics has one director, one assistant, and 3 coordinators. That's perfect, and I think they should have that, but we have got to level up fine arts. You have, how many students? We have, 9,000 students in fine arts, 7,000 in athletics. You divide that up, we're paying $250 for a fine arts student and $750 for an athletic student. We have got to level up fine arts and start paying them and start paying their teachers. If we lose that theater director to another school, which are constantly recruiting them, we will lose students. Those students will follow those theater directors. Those students will follow those choir directors. We have to pay them more, and we have to look at those stipends. And so I encourage the board to keep pushing those stipends and keep looking at the positions, because fine arts matters too. I'll yield the floor.
Okay. I just have one comment.
Can you, as we're working through these budget workshops, I know, like, I guess addressing what Trustee Aliseda is talking about, like the changes that we made from budget workshop number 2 to now, can you guys put that together and kind of take us through that thought process so that when we're seeing these changes, we can understand what the logic is when we're making those changes, especially when we're starting higher and then we get to this point and it's lower, because that might help us to understand.
Yeah, as we've been looking at least I can say since I started, looking at stipends and salaries and everything with personnel, we're looking at where we are, of course, because in some cases we may be years behind, and in other cases we're right there where everybody's at. So we're always looking at where we are, and in comparison also to surrounding districts to be competitive. And in those cases that were very low, we've been moving them up since last year and this year. And we've had those conversations in my meetings that we're going to continue to move up everybody that is below, and especially those that are way below, to continue moving them up. The problem is that sometimes I can't move someone or a group of employees all of a sudden move them up to where, like trying to make up 5-6 years of being below. But we continue to move the amounts to stay and get closer to that market value. For the most part, I think we've already leveled up a lot of stipends, but there's a few that we still need to continue to move up, and we are moving them up, not at the rate that we should, because it's about trying to balance everything that we're doing. But yes, we're moving them up, and we will continue to do that until we catch up. And we've been doing that since last year and this year. And so, but we can show you those, bring it back again and discuss those stipends and look at the comparisons with surrounding districts and where we were before and what we're doing now to continue to move up the employees. I want the employees to have good stipends. I want them to be competitive. I want us to be competitive with surrounding districts so that we don't lose them to other districts, and that's what we're doing. Except that some of those stipends may take a little longer because of the years that has been way below in comparison to other districts. But our intent is to continue moving up as everyone in stipends, in salaries. Our conversations are always about staying competitive. It's not about staying below.
I think it would I'm sorry. I think it would be beneficial if we saw side-by-side comparisons. Budget workshop 1, this was the stipend 3, and now 5. I commend Trustee Aliseda because she is always super prepared and will help with recall on some of these, and I'm going to be very sad very soon. But I think knowing the thought process of why these stipends have changed, because we haven't had those conversations outside of these meetings as to why there was a change, and that would help us to make that decision. The board ultimately has to set this budget, and we are going to have some very hard decisions soon, but we need to be able to have the autonomy to know those changes and why, and then we can decide, okay, well, this year fine arts gets more versus this, and I think we need to have more of a say in some of those changes, because we haven't had those discussions outside of here.
And just to Trustee Aliceda's point, I think we just need to shift our mindset into we're investing in enrollment and more enrollment, which is going to be a return on our investment when we invest in our employees and positions in the fine arts department, in the athletics department. But Trustee Aliseda is right that we bring in so much enrollment in our fine arts department because of the amazing things that they do, and so we need to compensate them appropriately and in a balanced way. Yeah. So I would agree with that.
Just one more thing, when you're talking about it when I'm not here, just remember that fine arts, they're on a different contract. They're on 226. So they're 226 days, whereas the athletics is 187 days. So when you're looking at their stipends also, if you have 15 days versus 5 days, you have to really make sure that, because that also an injustice or a disservice as well. So make sure you're comparing apples to apples. But I'll be at public comment to come and remind you.
Well,
Thank you.
2 minutes.
And we won't interrupt you.
everything, I'm gonna go back to trustee Kittleman, it's about a balance.
Yeah.
And, you know, we wanna give everyone, like, make that big jump that we need to make, but, you know, we got just continuously move up and maintain that balance that we need to maintain, because we have to think about many other things that we have to take into consideration.
And I would just like to make a note about the behavior specialist, because I'm not sure a lot of people understand that position, but it's a highly needed position, and so I'm very glad that you guys added that. We used to have 3 in the district. We went down to 2, and we're consolidating a lot. And like any district, we have students with various needs, diverse needs. We've got a lot of behavior, and we've got admin running all over the place, you know, like trying to help out with some of these issues. So adding this additional position is going to help so much with administration continue to stay like student focused and really doing their priority job. So thanks. I'm glad to see that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. And moving on, we kind of got aligned in our presentation with our friends at Estrada y Hinojosa, and I was bringing you a reminder of what our current bond debt is. And of course, our defeasance, we just processed this week the wire for the $7.2 million in defeasance. And the strategy, of course, debt defeasance, it's the early repayment of bond debt using INS fund balance, and it reduces the interest cost to the taxpayers, as you've seen how that has happened, and it also increases our future borrowing capacity, lowers the long-term interest payments, and it's good fiscal management, and the district has been on this process for a while now, a couple of years already. Actually, before even I started, the district had already planned on the first defeasance. I did want to share with you that House Bill 2 also is another bill that we're watching, not just because of the financial benefits that it brings, but it is the one that has the penalty for a state aid, INS state aid, if a board decides to do defeasance. So we feel that that's a priority item on that penalty. And as you saw in our presentation, the penalty that we would pay would be close to $1 million for this next term around. Moving on to our facility needs assessment, we are in the process of working with that. We've had several meetings with MGT, and this is going to help us identify what our needs are and what the dollars amounts are to address these facility needs. We will work with the committee and also the Facilities Forecast Advisory Committee, and then also seek community input through a town hall and also a survey, and then take that into consideration while prioritizing the needs. So another thing that we covered in a previous workshop were like different financing options, and the first one that had been talked about was the fund balance. And a TA recommends that a district have 75 days of operational expenditures to be maintained in the fund balance. We have 135 days. Although our fund balance is quite healthy, it's really, it's very limited and should be used for one-time expenditures. And if we were to address some of the needs, we would only begin to just chip away a tiny amount of what is needed. And then the other one is maintenance tax notes, and this is a summary of the maintenance tax notes we have right now. I provided the original issue amount and also the outstanding principal and interest column. So we owe about $30 million in maintenance tax notes. We will pay off in 2026 the 2011 series, and then we'll have the 2020 left, which is about $24 million. And should the district go out for a bond, we would be able to do a resolution where we can pay off the maintenance tax note with the bond funds. So shifting the expenditure from the maintenance and operation taxes to the INS side. So that's something to consider for the future.
Yeah, this is one that caught my attention since I got here because we borrowed on our maintenance and operations. And the reason some districts do this is that they don't have to go to the voters, but it takes away from our main drive, which is maintenance and operations, and it ties the money now to be making those payments for that loan. So if we go for a defeasance or a bond, I would like to put this as part of a payment so that we can free up that money and use it for maintenance and operations that would allow us to put it back on employee stipends, employee salaries, and be able to do more with that money. Because right now, we're taking a lot of money from there to make this note payment that the district borrowed money a couple of years ago. And it's taking a lot of that money away from us that we could put back into our employees. So,
Priority.
yeah, it's one of those that if we could shift those 30 million to the INS, and it will free up some monies for us in maintenance and operations, and then we can catch up with a lot of other things that we need to do, especially with stipends and salaries.
It's a big chunk.
Yeah, it's a big chunk, and usually Estrada Hinojosa is here, Mr. Magallanes and Dr. De Los Santos. You all know that it's not recommended to borrow from maintenance, to do maintenance tax notes because it takes away from what we need the money for to operate our district.
That's
So-
correct. We recommend for high-need emergencies to have that capacity, because you're also,
Yeah, go to the microphone so the community can hear you.
yes, we recommend not to borrow on the maintenance tax notes, because yeah, as Dr. Gutierrez just mentioned, that puts pressure on your M&O budget, and we only recommend for high-need emergencies, and there's also a cap on how much you could actually take out on the maintenance tax note. So if you start taking out quite a bit as you have currently, and a real emergency is needed, and you need to take out that money, you'll be capped on having to be able to borrow that money through the M&O side in this fashion. So.
Ms. Garcia, is there a current strain on our M&O?
Well, it's part of the budget, so you know how we had to take out $4.5 million from our fund balance in order to do the raises? We
Yes.
would have had to just take half of that if we didn't have this payment. So it does hamper our operations.
Okay.
That was a prior board and a prior suit, so. we can-
But we're still
Hopefully
making
this-
our payment.
Hopefully, yeah.
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 Hopefully that can get taken care of.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
that's what we're
we're happy to see that the 2011 is already ending, so we won't have that extra payment in 2026.
And I'm sorry, Dr. Gutierrez, you're recommending that 30 million that we have outstanding, well, not the 30, the
24?
28 million?
The 24?
The 24,
Well, the outstanding
Well,
balance
outstanding,
is
the
28, right?
Principal and interest, yes.
So it's
that's
28?
correct, 28.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing Dr. Gutierrez say that he wants to add that to the potential 290 million
Well,
that,
Take it out of there.
Take it out
Take
of
it
there.
out of there.
To pay it from there.
well, that's what I'm saying, so that would reduce what we could do something in terms of the district, facility-wise. 30 of it would be 10% of it would be earmarked for this 28 million.
Correct,
Got it.
correct. So
Okay.
that way it can help us free up money for our daily operations.
Got it.
And, those are things that,
No, it makes
With that.
sense.
so we're looking at everything. We're trying to see how we can utilize all our taxpayers' dollars and be able to be as conservative as we can, but also to be able to stretch those dollars more, for our district.
And finally, where we are at and where we're headed with our facilities needs assessment. I know one of the concerns was, if we were to call a bond, would we have a list of priorities? And the answer is yes, that is the plan. So as you can see, back in January, February, we did invite Estrada Hinojosa to do a presentation to the board where they talked about the different financing options, and they talked about the 290 million, the no tax rate increase, voter approved debt. They also talked about the defeasance and the strategy that we've been on. In addition to that, that same night, the board did approve the ranking for the facilities needs assessment request for proposal, and we negotiated the contract, and that was approved. And then in March, we did a report to the board on the facility needs assessment, on the status of that. We had our kickoff meeting with them, and we've already provided the data collection, provided them with site plans, enrollment data, boundary maps, capacity data. So they're already working behind the scenes with some of this information that we provided them. And then we've already scheduled the actual site visit. So we have that on the books, and we're ready to work with them on that. In May 5th, they will be sending us the schedules and educational adequacy guidelines for our review. So that's going to be a draft, and we'll be able to provide feedback to them. And then we would like to have a meeting in early May with the Facilities Forecast Advisory Committee and just kind of tell them this is where we've been, this is where we're at, and here's where we're going with this process. And then we would like to, on the 19th, have a meeting with where MGT would be the MC for that meeting, and they would be meeting with the Facilities Forecast Advisory Committee. We do have a meeting scheduled on the 6th of May with MGT to follow up on these plans. As far as the site visits are concerned, those are scheduled from the 19th to the 23rd. They would have their representatives on site at our campus and our district facilities. We would accompany them to these walkthroughs, and also a campus administrator, which would be the principal. And they would be interviewed as well, because they also not only are looking at the facility side, but they're also looking at the educational adequacy side. That's part of their reporting process. And then we would have
Ms.
a
Garcia, I'm
report
sorry
to the board.
The 19th to the 23rd, that's like the last week of school. It's going to be total chaos. There's productions going on, plays, all sorts of stuff going on. Do y'all want them on campus to see the students, or can you wait until school's finished?
Well, time is of the essence. Is really that's when they could get their travel plans, and we wanted them in May because so that it could have sufficient time to be able to produce the reports before July, in July, which is the deadline that we've given them, because then the board, if the board were to decide to do a November election, they would have to call the election in August. So that's the sense of urgency.
But regardless what is decided, we still need to do this, and we just want to be proactive and meet this timeline by the summer. So in case a decision is made, we're ready. And if it's not made because whatever is decided, we still have it. So regardless, we still need to do it. It's just that we want to be ready just in case. And that way, and I know that it's, no matter how we look at it, there's something going on every week.
Yeah.
And
Multiple
we've done
things.
this
It's a
once
busy
before
time.
when we did the TEA audit. You know, we walked the campuses while school was in session, and you know, we were able to address every single campus. So
We just need to be ready regardless. It needs to be done because we already approved it, and we do need to know a state of our facilities. If it's not through this, it's maybe through our own budget as we move on in the couple of years. As we move on, we can then draw from our budget to take care of those higher needs that we need to do based on this study.
Who is included in these meetings? Like let's say on May 6th, progress meeting.
Well, we're going to be working on that facilities forecast committee.
Okay.
We want to have, we already have names from campus representatives. We've already talked to the principals.
Okay.
But I'm going to need some names from representatives from the board, like I said earlier, and
Right.
some community members to start having those conversations with them.
Can we get those on our calendar and make
I
sure?
was just gonna
Because,
ask, can
yeah,
we
I'd like
attend
to,
these?
if I have time, I'd love to attend.
We'd love to
Sure.
have everyone.
Yeah, like all these dates, we can get a calendar
I'll provide this
invite.
information to
Okay.
Natalie. Okay, and then moving on to June, on the 2nd, we follow up with the FFAC meeting to review the findings, and then on the 10th, report to the board. And as you notice, there's a meeting to report to the board every single month. And then in July, the week of July 21st, community engagement, town halls, and online survey. And that's where we have that community engagement. And then 7/29, report to the board. Then in August, early August, we finalize the possible bond package, if that's the case, based on the feedback. And then the deadline for that would be the 18th of August to call for an election for November of 2025. And that's, should we go with that timeline, that's what we've come up with.
How many town halls do we anticipate? Like, just a guess. I know you don't have a concrete, but what are we thinking?
With MGT, I believe with MGT it's one, but as far as, this is for the facility needs assessment. For
Still, I
the
think that
priorities.
one town hall is not enough. You know, I
We
think
can-
we
we
need to
can
give
have
sufficient time for the
multiple.
community to give their input, because we're gonna rush through this if this
Yeah.
is what's gonna happen. And I think we need to discuss the opportunity to have town halls in different parts of the community and at different times too, because having a town hall before 5 PM, not
Yeah.
good.
And we can also have those ourselves,
Yeah.
We- not just MGT, but we can do it ourselves. We would be very involved with our forecast committee to do our own.
Yes.
And have those, more than one, for sure.
And
Definitely.
then I know we did, like, when we did the TRE, we, like, hit every campus, we hit a bunch of civic organizations.
But those all happen during the day. I want
community
I want the
information.
community that works to be able to come after 5:30 preferably, so they don't have to leave work
Yeah,
early to
Absolutely.
come. I want the community to have that opportunity to give their input.
And on that note, if you could please make it accessible by Zoom so people can appear electronically. I'm super advocate for Zoom. It's efficient and makes things a lot more accessible to everyone.
Okay.
Can I also
That's a good
suggest that when we're writing it down like this, we call it, instead of just bond election, call it bond defeasance election? And like how we use the acronym TRE, can we just say like BDE? I just hate seeing the word bond election without saying bond defeasance
Yeah.
election. So just to,
Is
just
there,
just start calling it BDE.
I was gonna suggest the same thing.
is there a
Is it TRE?
ruling,
Is
that-
that-
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know there's like legal.
is there a
way-
ruling
Yeah,
on the
we
language,
would-
the
we would
legal?
have to check with
Because
our
I don't know,
bond
there
counsel
might
on
be a
that.
ruling on,
Just, or even when, here on, when we have workshops, just
because it might,
call the bond defeasance election.
no, it would be a great idea. No, there might be a required language based on what's on the ballot.
Because technically, the defeasance
don't know
would happen
that.
first.
Dr. De Los Santos is,
before-
go ahead,
I don't
Dr. De Los
know that-
Santos.
That you'd be able to call it a bond defeasance because to defease bonds, you don't need an election. Basically, that would be a board decision. Now, you're gonna
A
have a
no-cost
bond
bond
election,
election.
which would be an election
tax
where people would vote up or down to borrow money. But the defeasance is kind of like
What we do with it.
assist you to keep the 16 cents so that you go out for a bond election without a tax rate increase. If I may also add, why bonds are so much better financings than maintenance tax notes, besides the fact that maintenance tax notes take away from your general fund and your business operations. The fairness of bond elections is that you go out for 30 years and not only the now taxpayers pay for it, you know, and a lot of times when you borrow or when you do pay as you go, where you collect taxes and you build up a little sum and then you go fix this building, fix that building and so on, with bonds as you're collecting them along the way, future taxpayers that are moving into the school district aren't paying for that. When you do a bond election and it's a sizable sum and you're improving all your facilities, anybody that moves into a residence somehow or another will pay for those improvements that you made in the schools. So that it's not it's not a burden just on those folks that are here within this year and the next 2 or 3 years, but it's something that'll be shared by everyone for the next 30 years.
But having improved facilities,
That's
and
the
thank
fairness
you.
of bond elections.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Dos Santos. That's a good point. But having improved facilities, is going to bring us more students, and it's going to allow us to grow. I think that really is kind of a win.
Okay, so now moving on to employee benefits update, I do have a bit of bad news. We have seen some uptick in the activity in claims, and we received a substantially large claim this past week, $440,000. We are going to submit it to stop loss, which covers us up to $330,000. However, we are going to have to transfer approximately $1 million into the health plan once again. So that's a budget amendment that I will be bringing forward to y'all.
What does that bring the total to of the budget amendments that we've done?
$3 million.
We need to fix that.
That's why
Right.
we're right now, we have a proposal for the pharmacy and for the health. We really need to, and we already presented on the health.
Yes, and that's, the dates are up there. We issued the medical plan administration request for proposal on the 16th of April, and then the pharmacy benefit management on the 19th of April. They close pretty close to each other on 5/7 and 5/12, and then we plan to award it sometime in August and September, effective January 1.
I did get a request that, and that's something maybe we can talk later, but this is a workshop and we're talking about employee benefits, that if the board would elect to interview the healthcare firms as well as a pharmacy for selection.
We've done that in the past. And it takes all day, it takes 2 days, but it's not unheard of.
Yeah, because that's a request on interviewing the health and the pharmacy finalists for the board to do the interviews and then make a selection based on their preference.
That's a request made by them or by us?
By us,
We asked.
yeah. Maybe the top 4 or the top 5.
Yeah, we've done it
And
before.
for both the health and the pharmacy, and then have those interviews with, in open with the board. And then, along with the consultant and the input from the district administration as far as who can give us the best value for our employees.
It's a great idea.
Will do.
So just keep that in mind, because we may have some more meetings just on that.
Thank you.
Okay. And then moving on to legislative update, we've already covered some of this information, but House Bill 2 increases public school funding. There was some amendments made to that, and to restore property tax relief for harmlesses. And then, in addition to that, the amendment delays increases to funding weights to compensatory education allotment and bilingual education allotment, and the teacher incentive allotment to 26, 27, the second year of the biennium. So that's not something that's welcome. The amendment also adds back, remember they only were addressing teachers in the raises. Well, now they added back nurses, librarians, and counselors to that calculation. So we kind of figured that would happen. They also tweaked the calculation language related to the new property insurance funding for the coastal districts. House Bill 2, continuing with the amendments. We also have a redistribution of funds between districts. So there could be, therefore making budgeting for compensatory education funds a little bit difficult. So that's going to be a challenge in the way they calculate that. In Senate Bill 2, which is the voucher bill, the important thing to note on that one is that the Senate has concurred with the House. They've agreed on that. And so that means that the education savings bill is on its way to the governor, which is very likely that he will sign it.
He will sign it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then
questions.
House Bill 19, we've already talked about that one. And that's it. That's all I had, legislative updates. Any questions? Further
Thank you
questions?
very much.
That's the conclusion of my presentation.
Do we have any further discussion before we move on to our next item? Nope. Okay. All right, so we move on to item 4, the annual announcement of continuing education by board members. So,
What's the verdict on that?
there's a verdict on this. Under State Board of Education rule, completing required continuing education each year of service is a basic obligation and expectation of any sitting board member. As board president, I'm required to announce the name of each member who has completed the required continuing education, has exceeded the required continuing education, and is deficient in meeting the required continuing education. The requirement for training are measured as of the first anniversary of the date of the trustee's election or appointment or 2-year anniversary of his or her previous training as applicable. There are 7 training areas for board members continuing education. Local district orientation to the Texas Education Code, post-legislative update to the trustees' education code, team building, additional continuing education, evaluating and improving student outcomes, sexual abuse, human trafficking, and other maltreatment of children, and school safety. On the first one, local district orientation, our first-year board member, trustee Lucia Thompson, has completed the local district orientation training. In item number 2, orientation in Texas Education Code, our first-year board member, trustee Lucia Thompson, has completed the Texas Education Code training. Item 3, post-legislative update to the Texas Education Code. The following board members with more than 1 year of service have completed the post-legislative update to the Texas Education Code: Aaron Rivera, trustee Aliceda, and trustee Lucia Regalado. The following board members have completed in meeting the post-legislative update to the Education Code: trustee Kittleman, trustee De La Garza Lopez, trustee Thompson, and trustee Sofia Pena. Texas team building, all board members have completed their team building training. Trustees Aliceda, Rivera, Regalado, trustee Pena, trustee De La Garza Lopez, trustee Kittleman, and trustee Thompson. And number 5, additional continuing education. The following board members have completed the additional continuing education requirements: trustees Rivera and trustee Regalado. The following board members are deficient in meeting additional continuing education requirements: trustee Aliceda, trustee De La Garza Lopez, trustee Kittleman, trustee Thompson, and myself, trustee Pena. Evaluating and improving student outcomes. The following board members have completed the biennial training on evaluating and improving student outcomes: trustee De La Garza Lopez, trustee Regalado, and trustee Rivera. The following board members are deficient: trustee Aliceda, trustee Kittleman, trustee Thompson, and trustee Pena. Sexual abuse and human trafficking and other maltreatment of children, child abuse prevention. The following board members have completed sexual abuse, human trafficking, and other maltreatment of children: trustee Rivera, trustee Aliceda, trustee Kittleman, trustee De La Garza Lopez, trustee trustee Regalado, and trustee Pena. The following board members are deficient in the same: trustee Thompson. And number 8, school safety. The following board members have completed the biennial training on school safety: trustee Rivera, trustee Kittleman, trustee De La Garza Lopez, trustee Regalado, and trustee Pena. The following board members are deficient: trustees Aliceda and trustee Thompson. And finally, exceeding required continuing education. Trustee Rivera has exceeded training by 2.0 hours.
Congrats.
And that is it. I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn. I have a motion by trustee Regalado and a second by trustee Rivera. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. For a long time, it is a vote of 7-0, and we are adjourned at 7:29 p.m.